I'm really not going to say very triggering things, so hopefully you can't be triggered. I'm only going to talk about myself. But if you find that you can be triggered, then this ain't the place you want to be. If you already know my story, then you already kind of know what I'm going to talk about. So the topic of this live is about the day I lost my voice. As background, like, I was a very precocious child. I loved words. I still do. I love words. I loved speaking them. I love thinking them. I love, just using bigger ones. I love learning words. So I was the kind of person who spoke a lot when you can get me talking. And I always had stories, like plenty of them. My dish was, not my dish, my fork was in love with the spoon. Like, I made up soap operas for them. Guys, I used to sit at my aunt's and my grandmother's feet watching Nina and Cricket on Days of Our Lives. Oh, I'm sorry, Young and the Restless. So I love stories, and I loved all of that stuff. And so when I was in third grade, I learned how to sign my name when they taught cursive. And I used to tell people, whenever I signed my name, keep that because it's going to be famous one day. And I remember doing that from the time I learned how to write my name, from the time that I learned how to write my name, all the way until I was about 16 years old. And around that time is when I stopped telling people that they wanted to keep my signature because it was going to be famous one day. And I wondered why that was. But here, fast forward all the way to 2020, I'm in Jamaica for a business meeting, a business conference, and one of my dear friends, Yolinda, she asked me, so what's your story? Now, the story that I've been sharing with you guys has been about almost dying 2 years ago. And that is part of my story because that is when I realized I didn't know my voice. But that's not when I lost my voice. In fact, my voice has always been attacked. I've had dreams about, my voice being attacked by birds or by literally the devil himself with his hands around my throat. Like, I've had a lot of dreams about my voice being attacked. But going back and pinpointing where I lost my voice, this is where, well, honestly, I had no idea this was the moment. So as I was sharing with my friend, I had been raped when I was 16 years old by a person who was supposed to be my cousin. And the funny thing for me is that is not the most traumatic part of my story. That is not where the trauma actually was. And let me preface that by saying that was traumatic. Like, I totally didn't forget it ever in my life. I wrote 2 books about it. Like, that was traumatic. But the trauma came after. The trauma came when I walked directly back to school because, sorry guys, I'm on a selfie stick trying to set up my office. But the trauma came when I walked back to school from my aunt's house. She was directly across the street from the school. And so I went there for lunch one day, and that's when the bad things happen, right? So I'm trying not to trigger people, but y'all know what goes down. So that's when the bad things happen. And so I walked back in time for my next class, and I ran into a really good friend outside my classroom. And I told her, this guy just raped me. And she laughed. And it wasn't the kind of nervous laugh, because the very next thing that came out of her mouth was, there's no way he did that. Like, I know him. He wouldn't have to do that. Now, on one hand, I don't blame her for what she said, because this guy who was supposed to be my cousin was an extremely handsome guy. And he had a girlfriend. They had a child already. So there really was no reason to suspect that this person would commit such a heinous act. So I'm going to give her that. And then 2, she knew he was supposed to be my cousin. And so I understood her disbelief at that moment. I truly did. Well, I didn't understand it then. I understand it now as a grown-up. Like, I understood her disbelief. But the moment she laughed is when I lost my voice. Because if she couldn't believe me, and I knew what her reasons were for not believing me, nobody else was going to believe me. And so that is when I didn't vocalize to anybody else what happened. And was that the traumatic thing? Not necessarily, because the trauma compiled. Just 2 weeks after that event happened, I realized I was pregnant. And and I was in denial for a very long time. Very long time. But one thing I could not help was all of the symptoms, Like I would fall asleep and didn't realize I fell asleep. I couldn't be in the house when my mother cooked, when she fried things because the grease was terrible. So these things had her going, wait, hold on. And, but the whole point of that is that I wasn't able to vocalize to anybody what happened. And when they found out I was pregnant, the trauma compiled. It got worse because the people who I loved, pause, hold on, God darn it. The people who I loved and looked up to, or, just loved in general, they said the most traumatic things to me. And again, it is when I lost my voice, because my grandfather, who was the first man I've ever loved in my life, he tells me, now let me give you something about him real quick. Trying to figure out how much to give you, because Lord, there's a story there. This is the man I would do anything for, right? I swear, this is why I don't do lives, because I swear I end up crying every time, because I get so moved by words. Okay, so that was the man I would do anything for. Like, I loved him to the moon and back. He was my first father, because I didn't know who my real father was. Side note, turned out I'm a product of rape. I found that out when I almost died too. Like, secrets came out. So anyway, so I love this guy, and he would brag about me because I was a gifted child. I was highly intelligent. I had a genius IQ. Like, I was that person. And one of the things he said to me is, well, now you're not going to graduate high school. And that was like, how could you say that? Like, dude, like, this is just a baby. It doesn't take anything away from me. Mind you, I was naive in it, but I was like, what do you mean? Like, that doesn't stop me from studying. It doesn't stop me from going to school, whatever. So he said that. Then I had a cousin who I loved, and I still love. And she doesn't even remember saying this, but she told me, I used to look up to you, and now I don't. When I tell you, that was like a stake to the heart, filled with garlic and salt and anything else that could really cause a wound. And so that hurt. And then the third person who I loved said to me, how stupid could you possibly be? Don't you know anything about AIDS and condoms? And I could not speak to any of them. I couldn't speak back. I couldn't say, look at me, like, this happened to me. And that third person was my stepfather. And never once did we have the sex conversation. Never once. So it's like, how could you be so stupid? And then, one of the things that he said was like, your uncle died from HIV. And I was like, I didn't know that either. All those family secrets, the things that you don't say or don't tell people. So those are the three main people, again, who I loved dearly, and who, when they found out I was pregnant, were some of the first people to come down on me. But because that girl laughed when I told her what happened, immediately, y'all, I wasn't like some kind of movie chick, like, where I'm crying in the shower and all of that stuff, right? Look, I had a bathroom moment because I had to clean that stuff up before I can go back to school. But, it wasn't one of those, I'm going to hold this secret. I literally told somebody immediately. Like, literally told somebody immediately. Now, mind you, she was a young person just like me. So it was a lot, I'm sure. But that didn't stop me from being silenced, right? So, fast forward, I had a friend who seen me in a hallway, and my belly was big and protruding at that point, I guess. And he was like, how would you get knocked up? And I'm like, what, you act like I can't have a boyfriend or something? because I bristled under that. I was like, are you trying to say that I couldn't have somebody? Now, mind you, this guy, the one who said it to me, was the one I had a major crush on. Let me tell you, that was a disaster avoided because I met him years later again on Facebook, and he was one of those Facebook guys, you know what I mean, in the inbox. But anyway, there was that. So I had people like, yo, like you of all people. And then I had another person was like, something like, look at you getting knocked up, or, just stupid things. And finally, when I gave birth to my son and I had to take him to the doctor, the pediatrician looked down on me because I was this young 17-year-old looking girl. Well, I don't even know if I looked 17 years old, but she was my pediatrician, and here I am coming to her with a baby. And so she looked down on me. But never once could I speak against the recrimination. Never once could I speak up against the way that people looked at me and the things that they said to me. And that was 16-year-old me. Fast forward, I go to high school because I'm like, you're not going to do, I graduate from high school because I'm like, you're not going to tell me what I can't do. I graduate from college. That was a struggle. Again, you're not going to tell me what I can't do. And in college, that's where I first started exercising my voice a little bit because chat rooms came around. And because I still couldn't speak to people I actually knew, I unloaded on people in those chat rooms. And now I know how dangerous that was. You don't do that. You don't go, yeah, by the way, I got raped. That's not a conversation starter inside of a chat room. So anyway, and I would always freeze up because the next question after people found out was like, so what happened to him? Did you prosecute? Did he go to jail? Blah, blah, blah. And I would leave the chat room because the answer to that was no. Why? Because I didn't speak up. I didn't use my voice. Like, my voice was taken. So I didn't speak out against what happened to the right kind of people. So, and I'm bringing that up now because I realized, again, just 2 years ago when I was dying and didn't know it. So don't even think I was like, oh, I got a bad diagnosis. Like, I really had no idea I was dying. So it wasn't like a, whoa, tragedy thing. But what it was I didn't know who I was. I didn't know my voice. I didn't even know what the sound of my voice was. Like, and I don't mean necessarily like, these vocal vibrations of voice, but I meant like, who was I? Like, if somebody's from New York, they got an accent, they might be a little brassy, but who was Shaniqua? I didn't fit into what cultural expectations were, and I didn't fit into what business expectations were. I wasn't the girl with the name Shaniqua, like what people thought that person looked like. Mind you, most Shaniquas that I know are pretty professional. Hey, Angelina. So, like, I didn't fit in any mold that people wanted to put me in, yet I couldn't tell you where I belonged because I didn't know my voice. I didn't know where or how I wanted to impact this world because I had no idea what my real story was. Like I said, I thought for so long that my story was about me being raped. And then I thought it was about me almost dying, not knowing what my voice was. But my real story is about when my voice was taken, when I lost my voice, when I gave up my voice. And so my journey has been, and my mission has become, helping people find their voice and use it in their life. Like, I ended up teaching for almost 15 years, which was a job that never fit me, but I couldn't exercise my voice. It is one of the most emotionally abusive jobs there is. There's a reason why it is female dominated and most of the men are the leaders. It is a financially abusive job as well. And I'm not going to get onto this horse about it, but it's really a job that are for the voiceless. It really is. And so I settled for that. When my college advisor in my freshman year questioned my desire to get a foreign language degree, I wanted to study Italian and French and Spanish, and her little North Carolina accent blonde and all that stuff, was like, what do you need one of those for? Well, little did we know the world was going to become small. Like, it's super small. And, you know, a girl named Shaniqua who knew 4 languages would have been a little powerful. You know what I'm saying? You know, but I was a world traveler in my mind and in my heart and in my readings. And, you know, my favorite shows were the Travel Channel shows. I wanted to be that person. But it's kind of limited to do that when you don't speak the language. It really is. Um, because people like for you to try. They like for you to show that you value their culture enough to learn how to speak like them, right? Again, using your voice for greater good, for impact. And so I allowed for most of my life for people to keep me silent and to interject their voice over mine. And when I got into this entrepreneurial space, I allowed the same thing to keep happening. When coaches and consultants and just the space became, you got to do this, you got to do that, and no, there's no room for you unless you're doing things the way that we are doing things. You have to do this and you have to do that. And if it doesn't feel good, you have to question yourself, because I had to question myself. Does it not feel good because that isn't me? Or does it not feel good because I'm shy and I'm scared and it's uncomfortable? There's a difference there. You know, if it's just uncomfortable, that's okay. Life is uncomfortable. You go out and you try. But if it is really against who you are, if it's not authentic to be somebody online every single day, talking to people every single day, if it's not authentic for you to create care packages for clients and customers, if that stuff is not authentic to you, it's not authentic to you. Period. There are so many ways to do business, and there is not just one. But what is really important, and one of the reasons why I'm talking to you about this, is that you've got to start using your voice. You've got to start showing up the way that you want to show up, the way you would sit and listen, the way you would learn. Because at the end of the day, the person you're really reaching back to help, 98% of the time, I've only had 2 clients where it wasn't. 98% of the time, the person you're helping is you. Every time I work with a client, every time I take them through a call or a strategy call, every time I do, for instance, I have my brand story boot camp that started today. Every time I'm working with people, I'm working with that 16-year-old girl named Shaniqua. The one where she made a statement and it was laughed at. That is how it is here in this space. People, if they don't laugh at you, they shrink you. And it's time to stop shrinking, guys, because, listen, do you want to almost die with your voice? And today, that is so possible. Be it, a pandemic, that thing could rob you of your voice and your life within days, weeks, months. It's really that easy for life to end. Or it could just be watching your livelihood go, or people debate your existence. Use your voice, So Angelina just said, I agree, some of those who have set the standard for the many arenas we desire to enter snatch our authenticity. Yeah. But that said, it is up to you to snatch it back. Or matter of fact, you can let them have what they already took, because chances are you need to grow into who you are anyway, and who you are is not the person who would allow that to happen. Plain and simple. You are no longer that person. And as I said, I'm no longer that 16-year-old girl. Now I know if somebody laughs, you go to the next person, because that wasn't the audience for you. And that's all I got to say. I don't want to keep going. But that really was the moment that I lost my voice, and almost dying was the moment I started fighting to get it back. It didn't happen in one go. It happened over a series of steps, because action is the mother of design. You will start finding your way as you step forward. You know, it's kind of like that Billie Jean video, you know, Michael Jackson, Billie Jean, you're not my lover, that guy. But you notice, like, whenever he took a step, it lit up. So step light, you know what I mean? So in other words, you have to take steps even in this darkness, even in the part that's uncomfortable, you know, but only walk in those places that are in alignment with you. You will feel it in your heart, you will feel it in your gut. You will hear the spirit talking to you like, girl, you better keep going. Listen, when you can't rely on your own self, when you can't trust yourself to make that decision, you get quiet, you get still, and you tune into the high vibrations. That's what I do. I go to my prayer journal, and that's how I get it out, and that's how I get my instructions. So that's all. That was my story, which is about the time that I lost my voice. And y'all, I don't 100% have it. I'm not even going to pretend that I do. But I do know I'm about to get it all the way. And when I do, listen, y'all better learn how to keep my autograph because it's going to be famous one day. Bye, guys.